The transport ship smelled like fear and metal. Yuna sat with her back against the cold wall, her knees pulled up to her chest. Around her, dozens of other humans sat in the same way. No one spoke. They had stopped speaking days ago. Through the small window, she could see the planet growing larger. Dracarys Prime, the heart of the Dragon Empire, the place where humans like her became property. Yuna was 24 years old. 6 months ago, she had been a physical therapist on Colony Vega 7. She had a small apartment with plants on the windowsill. She had patients who smiled when they saw her. She had a life. Then the Dracari came. They did not attack. They simply informed the colony that it was now part of their empire. Those who could not pay the new taxes would be sold to cover their debt. Yuna could not pay. Her parents could not pay, so she sold herself to buy them passage to a free world. She did not regret it. She would do it again. The ship landed with a heavy thud. Guards in black armor walked through the cargo hold, checking numbers against their tablets. They did not look at faces. Humans did not have faces to them. Humans had numbers. Yuna's number was called. She stood and walked forward. A guard grabbed her arm and pushed her toward a transport vehicle. She did not resist. She had learned quickly that resistance only brought pain. The Imperial Palace was the largest building Yuna had ever seen. It rose from the red stone of the planet like a mountain made of glass and gold. Towers reached toward the purple sky. Ships flew around it like insects around a flame. She was taken to a processing center deep inside the palace. Here, humans were cleaned, examined, and assigned their duties. A Dracari official looked at her file and made a sound of surprise. "Medical training," he said. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "Physical therapy, interesting." Yuna said nothing. She had learned that too. "You will serve in the Eastern Tower," the official said. "Report to the head servant there. His name is Minyu. He is human like you." The Eastern Tower. Yuna noticed that the other officials looked away when they heard the name. One of them made a small gesture with his clawed hand, a sign to ward off bad luck. She was given simple gray clothes and led through endless hallways. The palace was beautiful and terrible. Statues of Dracari warriors lined the walls. Paintings showed great battles and conquests. Everywhere she looked, she saw power and violence. Finally, she reached the Eastern Tower. It stood apart from the rest of the palace, connected by a single bridge. A human man waited for her at the entrance. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired eyes. "You are the new one," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, my name is Yuna. I am Minyu. I have served here for 15 years. He looked at her with something like pity. "You will not last long, they never do." "Why?" Minyu did not answer. He simply led her inside. The tower was quiet, too quiet. The halls were empty. The rooms were dark. It felt less like a palace and more like a tomb. "The prince lives here," Minyu said finally. "The emperor's only son. He is different." "Different how?" "You will see." They climbed stairs for a long time. Yuna's legs burned, but she did not complain. Finally, they reached a large door covered in gold designs. Dragons flew across its surface, breathing fire and light. "Clean his room," Minyu said. "Bring his food. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch him. Do not look at him for too long." He paused. "And do not expect kindness." He opened the door and pushed her inside. The room was huge. Windows covered one entire wall, showing the city far below. Expensive furniture filled the space. Books were stacked on every surface. And in the center of it all, sitting in a strange floating chair, was the prince. He was not what Yuna expected. The Dracari she had seen were massive and powerful. They walked with pride. Their wings spread wide behind them. Their eyes burned with fire. This one was different. He was young, maybe equivalent to 19 human years. His scales were a deep blue color like the ocean at night. but his wings hung limp against his back, small and twisted. His legs, which should have been thick with muscle, were thin and still. He did not sit in his chair like a prince. He sat like a prisoner. When he saw her, his yellow eyes filled with rage. "Get out," he said, his voice cracked. Yuna did not move. "I said get out." He grabbed a cup from the table beside him and threw it at her. It missed her head by inches and shattered against the wall. Still, Yuna did not move. She had worked with difficult patients before. She had been screamed at. She had been hit. She had learned that sometimes the anger was not really about her. She walked to where the cup had fallen. She bent down and picked up the pieces, one by one. Then she placed them on a tray and began cleaning the room as if nothing had happened. The prince stared at her. "Are you deaf?" he demanded. "Are you stupid? I told you to leave." "I was told to clean your room," Yuna said calmly, "so I will clean your room." For a long moment there was only silence. Then, slowly, the prince turned his chair away from her and faced the window. Yuna cleaned. She worked quietly and carefully. She noticed things as she worked. The prince had many books, but they were covered in dust. No one had touched them in a long time. The beautiful furniture had scratches and dents, like things had been thrown at it. The windows were dirty on the inside. The whole room felt abandoned. When she finished, she stood by the door. "I will bring your food in 1 hour," she said. The prince did not respond. That night, Yuna found Minyu in the servants' quarters. He looked surprised to see her. "You are still here," he said. "Yes." "He did not make you cry." "No." Minyu studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed and sat down. "His name is Tiho," he said. "Prince Tiho. He was not always like this. When he was young, he was bright and happy. He was going to be a great emperor someday." He shook his head. Then the sickness came. "What sickness?" "A plague, a neural plague. It attacked his nervous system. The Drakari doctors tried everything, but they could not fix him. His wings stopped working. Then his legs. Now he cannot walk, he cannot fly. He is trapped in that chair, in that room, in that tower." Minyu's voice was heavy with sadness. "His father, the emperor, is ashamed of him. He keeps him hidden here, away from the court, away from everyone." Yuna thought about the angry young prince in his floating chair. She thought about his dusty books and his dirty windows. "Can I see his medical files?" she asked. Minyu looked at her like she was crazy. "Why?" "Because I want to understand." That night, Yuna read everything she could find about Prince Tiho's condition. The Drakari doctors had written hundreds of pages. They had tried surgery. They had tried medicine. They had tried machines that connected directly to his nerves. Nothing worked. But as Yuna read, she began to see something. Something the doctors had missed. The prince's body was not broken. His nerves were damaged, yes, but they had healed years ago. The connections were there. The pathways existed. The problem was not in his body. The problem was in his mind. Yuna closed the files and stared at the ceiling. She knew this condition. She had seen it before, back on her colony. Patients whose bodies shut down not because of physical damage, but because of trauma. The mind, trying to protect itself from pain, simply forgot how to talk to the body. The Drakari did not understand this. Their medicine was about machines and chemicals. They did not understand the strange connection between thought and flesh. They did not understand that sometimes the body needed to be taught to trust itself again. But humans understood. Humans had been healing this way for thousands of years. Yuna smiled in the darkness. Maybe, just maybe, there was something she could do. Yuna did not tell the prince what she was planning. She knew that if she told him, he would refuse. He had been poked and tested by doctors for years. He had heard promises that were never kept. He had learned to expect nothing. So she did not promise anything. She simply showed up every day. At first, Tiho ignored her completely. He sat by his window and stared at the sky. He watched the other Drakari fly past, their great wings carrying them through the purple clouds. His face was empty, but Yuna could see the pain in his eyes. She cleaned his room, she brought his food. She said good morning and good evening. He never responded. On the fifth day, she brought something different with his meal, a small fruit from the palace kitchen. It was red and round and smelled sweet. She placed it beside his plate. "What is this?" Tiho asked. It was the first time he had spoken to her in days. "It is called an apple," Yuna said. "It comes from Earth, from my home world." Tiho looked at the fruit with suspicion. "Why did you bring it?" "I thought you might like to try something new." He stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he picked up the apple and took a small bite. His eyes widened. "It is sweet," he said. "Yes. Our fruit is not like this. It is bitter, strong." He took another bite. "This is soft." Yuna smiled. "Humans like soft things." It was a small moment, a tiny crack in the wall around him, but it was enough. After that, Yuna began bringing small things from the human world. Bread that was warm and light, tea that smelled like flowers. Once she brought a picture of Earth that she had saved on her tablet. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. "This is your world?" Tiho asked, looking at the picture. "It was. I have never been there, but my grandparents told me stories." "It looks peaceful." "It was before the wars, before the expansion." Yuna sat down on the floor near his chair. She was careful not to get too close. "Now there are humans on 1,000 worlds, but we still remember Earth. We still miss it." Tiho was quiet for a moment. "I have never left this planet," he said. "I have never left this tower. Never. My father says I am not fit to be seen, that I shame the royal blood." His voice was bitter. "So I stay here, I watch others fly, and I wait to die." Yuna felt her heart break a little, but she kept her voice calm. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "What?" "When did you stop trying to walk?" Tiho's eyes narrowed. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. When did you stop trying?" "I cannot walk. My legs do not work, the doctors said." "I know what the doctors said." Yuna met his eyes. "But when did you stop believing it might be possible?" The prince was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "I was 7 years old. I had been sick for a year. The doctors did their final surgery. They said it would fix me." He closed his eyes. "It did not fix me. I woke up and tried to stand and fell. I tried again and fell again. I tried 100 times, 1,000 times, and every time I fell. And then I stopped trying." He opened his eyes. They were wet. "What was the point? I was broken. I would always be broken." Yuna nodded slowly. "Can I tell you something?" "What?" "On Earth, before humans went to the stars, we had people like you, people whose bodies stopped working, people who could not walk or move their arms. Sometimes it was because of sickness, sometimes it was because of accidents, and sometimes," she paused, "sometimes it was because of pain." "I do not understand." "The mind and body are connected," Yuna said. "When we feel great pain, sometimes the mind tries to protect us. It builds walls, it closes doors, it forgets how to talk to the body." She leaned forward slightly. "The body is not broken, the pathway is just lost." Tiho shook his head. "The Drakari doctors scanned my entire nervous system. They found damage, real damage." "Yes, but that damage healed years ago. I read your files." The prince stared at her. "You read my files?" "I was curious." "Those files are private. They are royal secrets." "I am just a human maid," Yuna said with a small smile. "Who would I tell?" For a moment she thought he would be angry, but instead something strange happened. Tiho laughed. It was a small, rusty sound, like a door opening after years of being closed. "You are strange," he said. "I know. The other servants are afraid of me. They run away when I shout at them. I have been shouted at by worse than you." Oh, he raised a scaled eyebrow. Who? My mother, when I was late for dinner. Tiho laughed again. This time it was louder. This time it sounded almost real. That night Yuna began her work. She did not call it therapy. She did not call it treatment. She simply called it talking. She sat with Tiho every evening and asked him questions. What did he dream about? What did he remember from before his sickness? What did flying feel like? At first he resisted. He said he did not want to talk about those things. It hurt too much. But Yuna was patient. She had learned patience from years of working with injured people. She knew that healing was not fast. Healing was slow and quiet, like water wearing down stone. Slowly, Tiho began to open up. He told her about his childhood, about racing through the palace halls with his wings spread wide, about his mother who had died when he was 5, about his father who had loved him once before the sickness made him into a disappointment. He used to carry me on his back, Tiho said one night. We would fly together over the mountains. He would tell me that one day I would be stronger than him, that I would be the greatest dragon emperor in history. His voice broke. He has not looked at me in 7 years. Yuna reached out and touched his hand. It was a risk. Minyu had told her never to touch him, but in that moment it felt right. Tiho froze. His scales were cool under her fingers. He looked at her hand like it was something impossible. I can feel that, he whispered. What? Your hand, I can feel it. His eyes were wide. I have not felt anything in my hands for years. The doctors said the nerves were dead. Yuna kept her hand on his. The nerves are not dead, they were just sleeping. That night she began the real therapy. She started with simple exercises. She asked Tiho to close his eyes and imagine moving his fingers. Not actually move them, just imagine. Picture the movement in his mind. He thought she was crazy, but he did it anyway. Now, she said, I am going to move your fingers for you. While I do it, I want you to imagine that you are moving them yourself. She took his hand and gently bent each finger, one by one. Tiho kept his eyes closed. He concentrated harder than he had ever concentrated on anything. They did this every night for 2 weeks. Nothing seemed to change. Tiho grew frustrated. He said it was useless. He said she was wasting her time. But Yuna kept going. She had seen this before. The breakthrough always came when you least expected it. On the 15th night, it happened. Yuna was holding Tiho's hand, ready to move his fingers like she always did. But before she could touch them, his index finger twitched. They both froze. Did you see that? Tiho whispered. I saw it. I did not imagine it. No, you moved. You actually moved. Tiho stared at his hand. His finger twitched again. Then his whole hand trembled. I can feel it, he said. His voice was shaking. I can feel my hand. I can feel everything. Tears were running down his scaled face. Yuna had never seen a Drakari cry before. She did not know they could cry. She held his hand tighter. This is just the beginning, she said. We have a long way to go, but Tiho, do you understand what this means? He looked at her with eyes full of hope and fear. You are not broken, Yuna said. You were never broken, you just forgot how to talk to yourself, and now you are remembering. Somewhere in the palace, Lady Vera sat in her dark chamber. Her spy had just delivered a report about the strange human servant in the eastern tower, about the hours she spent alone with the prince, about the sounds of laughter coming from his room. Vera did not laugh. She did not smile. She simply called for another servant and gave a simple order. Watch the human, watch everything she does, and if she becomes a problem. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The news spread through the servant quarters like fire through dry grass. The prince had moved his hand. The human maid had done something impossible. Minyu found Yuna in the kitchen early one morning. His face was worried. You need to be careful, he said in a low voice. People are talking. Let them talk. You do not understand. The Drakari doctors have spent 12 years trying to help the prince. They have the best technology in the galaxy. And you, a human servant, did in 2 weeks what they could not do in over a decade. He grabbed her arm. They will not be happy about this. Yuna knew he was right, but she could not stop now, not when they were so close. The exercises continued every day. Tiho worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. He spent hours closing his eyes and imagining movement. He pictured his fingers bending, his hand opening and closing, his wrist turning. And slowly, impossibly, his body began to listen. Within a month, he could move all his fingers. He could grip things. He could hold a cup and bring it to his mouth without dropping it. These were small victories, but to Tiho, they were miracles. I held a book today, he told Yuna one evening. His eyes were bright with joy. I actually held it. I turned the pages myself. That is wonderful. I have not been able to read a real book in years, only tablets and screens. He held up his hand and looked at it like it belonged to someone else. I forgot what paper felt like. Yuna smiled. Soon you will do much more than hold books. The time had come to work on his legs. This was harder. The legs were bigger, more complex. The neural pathways were longer, and there was something else too. Tiho was afraid of his legs in a way he was not afraid of his hands. When I fell, he told Yuna, it was my legs that failed me. My hands never promised anything, but my legs, I expected them to hold me, and they did not. Do you blame them? I blame myself. He looked away. I was not strong enough. You were 7 years old, Yuna said gently. You were a child who was very sick. It was not about being strong. They started the same way they had started with his hands. Imagination first, movement later. Yuna had Tiho close his eyes and picture walking. Not just the motion, but the feeling, the pressure on the bottom of his feet, the stretch of his muscles, the way the world shifted when you moved through it. I do not remember what it feels like, Tiho said. Then we will create new memories. She touched his legs gently, moving them for him while he imagined doing it himself. Bending the knee, straightening it, lifting the foot, putting it down. It was slow work. Days turned into weeks. Tiho grew frustrated many times. He shouted. He cried. Once he told Yuna to leave and never come back. She left, and she came back the next morning with his breakfast as if nothing had happened. Why, Tiho asked her. Why do you keep coming back? Because you asked me to leave, Yuna said. If you really wanted me gone, you would have ordered me gone. You are a prince. You have that power. Tiho was silent for a long moment. I do not want you gone, he finally admitted. I am just afraid. Of what? Of hopping. His voice was barely a whisper. Every time I hope I get hurt, it is easier to expect nothing. Yuna sat beside him. Hope is not easy. It is the hardest thing in the world, but it is also the only thing that makes us try. The breakthrough came on a cold morning, 6 weeks after they started working on his legs. Yuna was sitting beside Tiho's chair, guiding his leg through the usual exercises. She bent his knee, straightened it, bent it again. Tiho had his eyes closed, concentrating. Then she felt resistance. His leg was pushing back against her hand, not falling limp, pushing. Tiho, she said carefully, open your eyes. He opened them. She slowly removed her hands from his leg. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, very slowly, his leg straightened on its own. Tiho made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I did that. I moved it. Yes, you did. I can feel it. I can feel my leg. He was crying now, tears streaming down his blue scales. Yuna, I can feel it. The next few weeks were intense. Tiho practiced constantly. He moved his legs while lying in bed. He bent his knees. He pointed his feet. Each movement was slow and shaky, but each movement was real. And then came the day when Yuna said the words he had been waiting to hear. I think you are ready to try standing." Tiho's face went pale. "Standing." "Just standing, not walking. We will take it one step at a time." They waited until night, when the tower was quiet and no one would see. Yuna helped Tiho move from his floating chair to a normal chair with no support. Then she stood in front of him and held out her hands. "Take my hands," she said. "Use them to pull yourself up. Your legs will help, but I will hold you if you fall." Tiho took her hands. His grip was strong now, much stronger than it had been when they started. "I am scared," he admitted. "I know, that is okay. Be scared and do it anyway." He took a deep breath, then he pulled. His body rose from the chair, his legs trembled, his muscles screamed. Yuna held his hands tight, taking some of his weight. And then he was standing. It only lasted 3 seconds. His legs gave out and he fell back into the chair. But for those 3 seconds, Prince Tiho stood on his own feet for the first time in 12 years. He was laughing and crying at the same time. Yuna was crying too. She did not care that she was a servant and he was a prince. She did not care about rules or customs. She hugged him and he hugged her back. "I stood," he whispered into her hair. "I actually stood." "You did, and tomorrow you will stand longer, and the day after that you will take a step." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the dark. But they were not as alone as they thought. Outside the tower, a spy watched from the shadows. He saw everything: the human maid helping the prince standing, the embrace. He reported everything to Lady Vera. The next morning, Yuna was summoned to the Imperial Medical Council. The council chamber was vast and cold. 12 Drakari physicians sat in a half-circle, their eyes fixed on the small human woman who stood before them. "You have been treating the prince," the head physician said. His name was High Physician Drauk, and he was ancient even by Drakari standards. Without permission, without training, without any understanding of Drakari biology. "I have been helping him," Yuna said calmly. "Helping him?" Drauk laughed, a cold, hissing sound. "You are a human, a servant. What could you possibly know that we do not? I know that his nervous system healed years ago. I know that his paralysis is not physical. It is psychological." The physicians looked at each other. Some laughed, others seemed offended. "Psychological," Drauk said the word like it was something dirty. "The mind does not cause paralysis. The body causes paralysis." "With respect, you are wrong." The chamber went silent. No one spoke to High Physician Drauk that way. "The human mind and body are connected in ways that machines cannot see," Yuna continued. "When we experience great trauma, our minds sometimes protect us by shutting down parts of our body. It is not weakness. It is survival, but it can be healed. Not with surgery, not with medicine, with patience, with trust, with helping the mind remember how to talk to the body." "Primitive nonsense," Drauk said. "Then explain how the prince moved his fingers for the first time in years. Explain how he stood yesterday. Explain what your technology could not do in 12 years, but human methods did in 3 months." Before Drauk could respond, the chamber doors opened. Everyone turned. Prince Tiho entered the room. He was in his floating chair, but he held himself differently now. His eyes were clear. His shoulders were straight. "The human stays," he said. His voice was strong and steady. "She has done more for me than any of you. If you have a problem with her methods, you have a problem with me." The physicians looked at each other nervously. No one knew what to say. In the back of the chamber, hidden in shadows, the emperor sat on a small throne. He had been watching the whole time. No one had noticed him enter. He said nothing, but his ancient eyes were fixed on Yuna with something that might have been curiosity. Or perhaps something more dangerous. After the confrontation with the medical council, things changed quickly. Tiho practiced every day, pushing himself harder and harder. Yuna stayed by his side, guiding him through each new challenge. Within 2 weeks, he could stand for several minutes at a time. Within a month, he took his first real step. It was just one step, a single movement forward. His legs shook so badly that Yuna had to catch him before he fell, but it was a step, his first step in 12 years. Again, Tiho said, breathing hard. You need to rest. Again. So they did it again, and again, and again. Tiho was not just recovering, he was changing. The bitter, angry prince who had thrown cups at her was gone. In his place was someone different, someone who laughed, someone who asked questions, someone who looked at the future with hope instead of fear. And something else was changing too, something between them. Yuna noticed it in small moments. The way Tiho smiled when she entered the room, the way he found excuses to touch her hand, the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching. She noticed it in herself too, the way her heart beat faster when she was near him, the way she thought about him when she was alone, the way she had stopped seeing a prince and started seeing a person. It was dangerous. She knew it was dangerous. She was a human servant. He was a Drakari prince. The gap between them was wider than the space between stars. But the heart does not care about gaps. One night, Yuna came to the tower to find Tiho standing by the window without his chair. He was looking at the city below, his weight balanced on his own 2 legs. You are getting stronger every day, she said. He turned to her. In the moonlight, his blue scales seemed to glow. I was thinking about what you said, he told her. About hope being hard, about trying even when you are afraid. What about it? He took a step toward her, then another. He was walking, slowly, carefully, but walking. I have been afraid my whole life, he said. Afraid of falling, afraid of failing, afraid of being hurt again. He stopped in front of her. But I am more afraid of never telling you how I feel. Yuna's heart stopped. Tiho. I know it is impossible. I know we are different. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is wrong. He reached out and touched her face gently. But I think I am falling in love with you. Yuna did not know what to say. She had spent her life being careful, being practical, being safe. But standing here, with his hand on her face and his eyes looking into hers, she did not want to be safe anymore. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. The kiss was gentle and strange. His lips were different from human lips, cooler and smoother, but it was still a kiss. It was still real. They stood together in the moonlight, holding each other, not caring about tomorrow. But tomorrow came anyway, and with it came disaster. The next day started normally. Yuna brought Tiho his breakfast. They talked and laughed. They practiced walking. Everything seemed perfect. Then Yuna started to feel sick. It started small, a little dizziness, a little weakness in her legs. She thought she was just tired. But by afternoon she could barely stand. Her vision was blurring. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it from Tiho, but he noticed. Yuna, what is wrong? I am fine, just tired. You are not fine, you are pale, your hands are trembling. He grabbed her arm. What is happening? She opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, her legs gave out. She collapsed toward the floor. Tiho caught her. He did not think about what he was doing. He did not think about his weak legs or his shaky balance. He simply moved. His arms wrapped around her, and he held her up with strength he did not know he had. Yuna, Yuna, can you hear me? Her eyes were half closed. Her breathing was shallow. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Tiho's mind raced. He knew she needed help. He knew she needed doctors, and he knew that to get her to the medical wing, he would have to carry her. He had not walked more than a few steps at a time. He had never carried anything heavier than a book. But this was Yuna. This was the woman who had given him his life back. He would not let her die. He lifted her in his arms. She was so light. Humans were so small, so fragile. How had he ever thought they were weak? Then he started walking. Every step was agony. His muscles screamed. His legs threatened to collapse. He hit walls. He nearly fell a dozen times, but he kept going. The hallway had never seemed so long. The stairs had never seemed so steep. Servants stopped and stared as the crippled prince carried the unconscious human Maid through the palace. When he reached the medical wing, his legs finally gave out. He crashed through the doors and collapsed on the floor, still holding Yuna in his arms. "Help her," he gasped. "Please help her." The Drakari doctors rushed forward. They tried to take Yuna from him, but he would not let go until they promised to save her. They laid her on a table and began scanning her body. Tiho sat in a chair nearby, his legs useless again, his whole body shaking with exhaustion. "What happened to her?" he demanded. High Physician Drauk looked at the scans with confusion. "There is something in her blood, a chemical compound, but it is not one we recognize." "A poison." "It appears so, but it is not a Drakari poison. It is something else, something," he looked troubled, "something we have never seen before." Yuna was dying. The poison was spreading through her body. The Drakari doctors tried everything they knew, but nothing worked. They did not understand human biology well enough. They had never bothered to learn. "There must be something," Tiho said. He had not left her side for 3 days. He had not eaten. He had barely slept. "There must be someone who can help." Minyu appeared at the door. He looked exhausted and afraid. "There might be someone," he said quietly, "but it is dangerous." "I do not care about danger. Who?" "There is a human underground, a secret network of servants and refugees spread across the empire. Some of them are doctors, real doctors with knowledge of human medicine." Minyu hesitated. "I can contact them, but if we are caught—" "Do it." 2 days later, an old woman arrived at the palace in the middle of the night. Her name was Bora. She had white hair and deep wrinkles and hands that had saved hundreds of lives. The guards let her through because Minyu bribed them. The servants looked away because they feared the prince. And Lady Vera, watching from the shadows, saw everything but did not act. "Not yet." Grandmother Bora examined Yuna for a long time. She looked at the scans the Drakari had taken. She felt Yuna's pulse. She smelled her breath. She did things that the Drakari doctors thought were primitive and strange. Then she smiled. "I know this poison," she said. "You do?" "It is old, very old. Humans used it in the civil wars on Earth hundreds of years ago, a slow-acting neurotoxin. It was designed to kill without leaving obvious marks." She shook her head. "Someone wanted this to look like natural causes." "Can you save her?" Grandmother Bora reached into her bag and pulled out simple ingredients. Herbs, plants, common things from the palace kitchen. "These are the ingredients for the antidote," she said. "Give me 1 hour." The Drakari doctors watched in amazement as the old human woman mixed a medicine from kitchen supplies. It made no sense to them. Their technology was 1,000 years ahead of humanity. How could this primitive method work? But it did work. Within hours of taking the antidote, Yuna's color began to return. Her breathing grew stronger. Her fever went down. Tiho held her hand through it all. He did not care who saw. He did not care what anyone thought. When Yuna finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was his face. "You walked," she whispered. Her voice was weak but steady. "What?" "Minyu told me. You carried me here. You walked all that way." She smiled. "I told you that you could do it." Tiho laughed, but his eyes were wet with tears. "I almost lost you." "But you did not." "I know who did this," Tiho said. His voice was suddenly cold. "My aunt, Lady Vera. She has wanted me dead for years so her bloodline can inherit the throne, but she could not kill me directly, so she tried to kill the one person who was helping me." Yuna squeezed his hand. "What will you do?" Tiho looked at her with eyes that had changed. The sadness was still there. The fear was still there. But something else was there too, something harder, stronger. "I will show her that she made a mistake," he said. "I will show everyone." "How?" The Festival of Ascension is in 1 month. It is when young Drakari take their first flight before the whole court. He paused. I will fly. Yuna's eyes widened. Tiho, your wings are still weak. We have barely begun working on them. 1 month is not enough time. Then we will have to work harder. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You taught me that impossible things are possible. Now help me prove it to the world. The next month was the hardest of Tiho's life. Walking had been difficult. Flying would be nearly impossible. His wings had been still for 12 years. The muscles were weak. The bones had not grown properly. The membranes that should have stretched wide enough to catch the wind were small and thin. But Tiho refused to give up. He worked from sunrise to sunset, doing exercises Yuna designed for him. He stretched his wings until they ached. He practiced flapping until he was too tired to move. He fell more times than he could count. Yuna was with him every step. She had recovered quickly from the poison, her human body stronger than anyone expected. She watched his every movement, corrected his form, and encouraged him when he wanted to quit. Your wings are not like Drakari wings, she told him one day. They are smaller, but that does not mean they cannot fly. It means you have to work smarter. She studied the anatomy of Drakari flight for hours. She read ancient books. She watched recordings of young Drakari learning to fly, and she found something interesting. Drakari flight is about power, she said. You throw yourself into the air and your wings do the rest, but your wings cannot do that. They are not strong enough. She paused. But there is another way. What way? On Earth we had birds, small creatures with wings. Some of them were huge and powerful like Drakari, but some of them were small and light. They did not fly with power. They flew with skill. They used the wind. They glided. They found currents of air and rode them like rivers in the sky. Tiho looked at her with wonder. You think I can fly like a bird? I think you can fly like Tiho, not the way other Drakari fly, your own way. They practiced this new technique every day. Tiho learned to feel the air to sense its movements. He learned to use his wings not as engines but as sails. It was strange and different from everything he had been taught, but slowly it began to work. 2 weeks before the festival, Tiho glided across his room for the first time. It was only 10 feet. His landing was rough and he hit a wall, but he had been in the air. His wings had carried him. I flew, he whispered. It was not pretty, it was not far, but I flew. Yuna was crying. She did not even try to hide it. You flew. The day of the festival arrived. The grand arena was packed with thousands of Drakari from across the empire, nobles in fine robes, warriors in ceremonial armor, common people who had come to see the spectacle. The Festival of Ascension was one of the most important days of the year, when young Drakari proved themselves worthy by taking their first flight before the court. The emperor sat on his great throne above the arena floor. His scales were gold and red, ancient and magnificent. Beside him, in the shadows, Lady Vera sat with a small smile on her face. She had heard that the prince was planning to appear. She thought it was a joke, a final humiliation before she found another way to remove him. The young Drakari took their turns one by one. They leaped into the air and flew in great circles, their wings spreading wide. The crowd cheered. The emperor nodded. Then the announcer spoke a name no one expected to hear. Prince Tiho, son of Emperor Galrath. The arena went silent. The great doors at the far end opened, and through them walked Prince Tiho. He was not in his floating chair. He was not being carried. He walked on his own legs, one step at a time, across the arena floor. The silence broke into whispers, then gasps, then a sound that grew into a roar of shock and disbelief. The crippled prince was walking. Lady Vera's face went pale. The emperor rose from his throne, his eyes fixed on his son. Tiho walked to the center of the arena and stopped. He looked up at his father, then at the thousands of faces watching him. His heart was pounding. His legs were shaking. Every part of him wanted to run away. But then he saw Yuna. She was standing at the edge of the arena floor in the place where servants waited. Her eyes met his, and she nodded. He turned back to the crowd and spread his wings. They were small. They were imperfect. Compared to the great, majestic wings of the other Drakari, they looked almost sad. Some people in the crowd laughed. Others looked away in embarrassment. But Tiho did not care. He had not come here to impress them. He had come here to prove something to himself. He closed his eyes. He remembered everything Yuna had taught him. He felt the air moving through the arena. He found the currents, the invisible rivers that flowed above the ground. Then he jumped. For one terrible moment he fell. His wings beat the air, but they were too weak. He was going to crash. He was going to fail in front of everyone. Lady Vera smiled. But then something changed. Tiho stopped fighting the air. He stopped trying to fly like other Drakari. He tilted his wings, caught a current, and glided. He rose. It was not graceful. It was not beautiful. He wobbled and dipped and nearly crashed 3 times. But he was flying. The prince who had never walked was flying. The crowd erupted. People screamed and cheered. Some wept. They were watching the impossible happen before their eyes. Tiho flew in a shaky circle around the arena. His wings burned with effort. His body screamed at him to stop, but he kept going. He would not give up. Not now, not ever. When he finally landed, he crashed hard. He hit the ground and rolled, coming to a stop at the base of his father's throne. His whole body ached. Blood dripped from a cut on his arm. But he was smiling. The emperor stepped down from his throne. He walked across the arena floor, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. He stopped in front of his son and looked down at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient dragon emperor did something no one expected. He knelt. He knelt before his son and took his hand. "I gave up on you," the emperor said. His voice was rough with emotion. "I thought you were broken. I was wrong." He pulled Tiho to his feet. "You are not broken. You were never broken. And you will be a greater emperor than I ever was." The crowd roared again, but Tiho was not looking at them. He was looking at Yuna. He walked toward her on legs that still shook but no longer failed. He walked past the nobles and the warriors and the common people. He walked until he stood in front of a small human maid who had changed his life. "Thank you," he said. "You did the work," Yuna replied. "I just showed you the way." "No, you did more than that. You showed me that I was worth saving." He took her hands in his. "You showed me that I could hope again." Behind them, guards were leading Lady Vera away. She had been exposed. Her spy networks dismantled. Her poison traced back to her suppliers. She would spend the rest of her life in exile, stripped of her title and her power. But neither Tiho nor Yuna cared about that. They only cared about each other. That night the emperor summoned Yuna to his private chambers. She went alone, her heart pounding with fear. The emperor sat in a simple chair, looking older than he had in the arena. "You saved my son," he said. "I helped him save himself." Modest and probably true, the emperor studied her with ancient eyes. "Humans are strange creatures. We conquered you so easily. We thought you were weak, but you understand things we do not. You see what we cannot see." "We have had a lot of practice being broken," Yuna said quietly, "and a lot of practice healing." The emperor nodded slowly. "I am releasing you from your servitude. You are free. I will give you a ship, credits, anything you want. You can go anywhere in the galaxy." Yuna was silent for a moment. "And if I want to stay?" "Stay. Here with Tiho." The emperor looked at her for a long time. Then, for the first time she had ever seen, he smiled. "Then stay," he said. "Stay and teach us what humans know. Stay and help my son become the leader he was meant to be." He paused. "Stay and be family." Months later, Yuna stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The purple sky was full of Drakari flying home after a day of work. Ships moved through the clouds like fish through water. Beside her, Tiho stood watching the same view. He was stronger now. His wings had grown, though they would never be as large as other Drakari wings. He flew every day in his own way, using the techniques Yuna had taught him. The council accepted the new policy today, he said. Humans will no longer be sold as servants. They will be offered citizenship instead. That is wonderful. It is just the beginning. We have a long way to go. He turned to look at her, but we will get there together. Yuna smiled and leaned against him. He wrapped a wing around her, sheltering her from the evening wind. Will you teach me to fly properly? He asked. It was an old joke between them now. Humans do not fly. Then we will figure it out together. And they did. In the years that followed, Prince Tiho became Emperor Tiho. He was not the strongest emperor in Drakari history. He was not the most powerful, but he was remembered as the wisest. He was remembered as the one who saw value in those others dismissed. He was remembered as the one who learned that true strength came not from perfect wings, but from the courage to fly anyway. And beside him, through it all, stood a small human woman who had accomplished the impossible. Not through technology, not through power. Through patience. Through hope. Through love. The Drakari had conquered 100 star systems. They had advanced technology that humans could barely understand. They were strong and proud and ancient. But they had never learned the simple truth that Yuna knew in her heart. Everyone falls, everyone breaks. What matters is not the falling. What matters is getting back up. What matters is learning to fly again.